This is a congregation that gathers in faith. We gather in faith of the power of diversity, the power of love, and the hope of a world transformed by our care. We gather in faith in ourselves and in those around us, not a faith that requires perfection or rightness in one another, rather a faith that in our shared imperfection we may learn to stumble and fall together, and faith that we will help one another to rise and try again and again. We gather to engage and re-engage with the path towards peace and justice. So this morning, as we take another step along that long road, let's do what we can to perfect this precious world together. With these words from Sunshine Jeremiah Wolf, welcome all who have gathered this morning for our Sunday service. Welcome to those of you, the select few who are here in person this morning. Welcome to anyone who's joining us via Zoom, or indeed anyone who's joining via YouTube or the podcast at a later date. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Jane Blackall and I'm minister with Kensington Unitarians. Our service this morning is titled Good Faith. I've had a few conversations recently about the nature of faith, and it's reminded me just what a slippery word faith can be. It's hard to pin down. In the more mainstream religious traditions, it might be a little easier to define the concept with reference to particular beliefs we might hold in common, but it's not so clear for Unitarians. So this morning I'm going to invite you to reflect on what faith means to you personally, what it means for us to be people of faith collectively, when we belong to such a free religious tradition and we tend to be quite theologically diverse. As a leaping off point, I want to offer some words from the Buddhist teacher Sharon Salzberg. The words are printed on the front of your order of service if you're in the building, and if you're online, the text of the whole service is on our website. She says, I want to invite a new use of the word faith, one that's not associated with a dogmatic religious interpretation or divisiveness. I want to encourage delight in the word, to help reclaim faith as fresh, vibrant, intelligent and liberating. Faith does not require a belief system and is not necessarily connected to a deity or God, though it doesn't deny one. This faith is an inner quality that unfolds as we learn to trust our deepest experience. So let's take those words into the hour to come, and let's light our chalice flame as we do each time we gather, this symbol that connects us with Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists the world over, and which reminds us of the long and proudly progressive religious tradition of which this gathering is part. And perhaps as we light the flame, we can take that as a little moment to take a breath, let go of anything we came in carrying, and settle and centre ourselves for this time of worship. We light this chalice as a reminder of the tradition that holds us and the values and aspirations that we share as a community, our commitment to the common good, our yearning for a better world that's yet to be, where all may know true freedom, justice, equality and peace. May this small flame be to us a sign of faith and hope and love. Time for us to sing now. Our first hymn this morning is on your hymn sheet in the middle of your order of service. We sing the faith. We haven't got any help from Benji or Edwin today to help with the singing, so please do your best to sing up. I've tried to pick familiar and easy tunes. Let's do our best. If you're on Zoom, the words will be up on screen as they will for all the hymns today. Feel free to stand or sit as you prefer. We sing the faith. So let's take all of those joys and concerns, both spoken and unspoken, into an extended time of prayer now. This is based on some words by Calvin Dane. You might want to adjust your position to get more comfortable, put down anything you don't need to be holding. Maybe there's a posture that helps you to feel more prayerful and centered. Whatever helps you to get into the right state of body and mind, for us to be fully present with ourselves, each other, and that which lies within us and beyond us. Spirit of life, God of all love, in whom we live and move and have our being, we turn our full attention to you, the light within and without, as we tune into the depths of this life and the greater wisdom to which and through which we are all intimately connected. Be with us now as we allow ourselves to drop into the silence and the stillness at the very center of our being. May we this day be grateful for the gift of life which is ours, remembering that today and always the precious life we have and hold is to us a mystery. May we this day be reminded of the responsibilities we carry, not so that we may be intimidated or overwhelmed, but so that we may be true to them, so that we may be faithful in carrying them forward. May we this day retain a sense of perspective, remembering who we are, engaging the tasks at hand, but understanding our limitations, understanding our own shortcomings, and forgiving ourselves and others when we fall short of perfection. May we this day be inspired, be filled with new breath, with new enthusiasm, ready to see fresh possibilities, new perspectives, unnoticed avenues for fruitful action and resolution. And may we this day remember those virtues that bless our lives and the lives of others, the virtues of caring and concern, truthfulness and integrity, charity, good work and persistence, remembering that this world may yet be made a little more fair, more just, more equitable by our humble efforts, as we stand up to be counted and live according to our faith. And let's take a few quiet moments now to look inward, to get in touch with what's really real, what's going on beneath the surface of our lives this morning. Let us notice what it is that we're carrying, what might be troubling us, what questions we are faced with, and what hopes we nurture. And from that place of authentic seeing, silently and inwardly ask for what you most need. Don't worry about who you're asking. Maybe it's God, maybe you're casting it into the universe. Even if you're the only one that hears your prayer, be clear in yourself on what it is you need this day. And let us also be sure to give thanks for all that we already have. Let's look back on the week and recall all those moments, be they large or small, moments of kindness, generosity, comfort and joy. Let us silently take time to savour all those gifts, to connect with a sense of gratitude and to take in what's good. And let us turn outward now, shifting our attention to the world around us, from those who are closest to our heart, out to our neighbours and strangers, and into the wider community as we stretch ever onward. Let us sense our connection to every living being that we share this planet with, and hold them all in love. Spirit of life, God of all love, as this time of prayer draws to a close, we offer up our joys and our concerns, our hopes and our fears, our beauty and our brokenness, and we call on you for insight, healing and renewal. As we look forward now to the coming week, help us to live well each day and be our best selves, using our unique gifts in the service of love, justice and peace. Amen.
This reading is of excerpts adapted from Faith by Jean Harrison Newyer. Rabbi Lawrence Kushner tells the story of visiting a Hebrew school and asking the children there how many of them believe in God. To his dismay, not a single hand went up. Eventually, he thought to ask instead, how many of them ever felt close to God? Showing no awareness of the contradiction, every child raised a hand. They talked about feeling close to God when helping their parents, when lighting Sabbath candles, when they felt angry and sad at a grandparent's death. Too often, it seems we get hung up on the question of believing in, when what really matters is closeness to or faith. Richard Niebuhr writes, "The belief that something exists is an experience of a wholly different order from the experience of reliance on it. And this experience of reliance, of faith, lies at the core of religious life. We know how to develop systems of belief by preaching and teaching, participating in discussions, singing songs and telling stories. But faith is another matter. Nourishing this feeling of reliance, of trust, in the lived experiences of our community members is a significant task in our Unitarian congregations. As we strive to create safe communities and to foster intimacy and ultimacy in the small group ministries of our congregations, we work to deepen faith. As we discern meaningful opportunities for living our faith, in soup kitchens, at hospital bedsides, in the ceaseless work of advocacy and protest for the common good, we support and strengthen this dimension of our living. This work that we do in the world is embodied faith, And as we shape the world around us to be more whole and healthy, more hopeful and just, those feelings of wholeness and hope grow within us as well. It is the true work of our congregations. We are people of faith.
Thanks, Brian. Let's sing again now. Our second hymn is also on your hymn sheet if you're in the building. This is new words to an old and very familiar tune. Church is more than just a building. This one was written by Amanda Udis Kessler, who's written several of our new favourites. She did The Church Where Love Lived and Who Is My Neighbour and all the others I keep foisting on you. This was one she wrote in 2020 during the lockdowns, but the message is still valid. The church is not the building, it's the community of faith and our shared purpose. So let's sing it in that spirit. Church is more than just a building.
Religion at its Best by Sarah Gibb Millspaugh. Religion is as much about faith in humanity as it is about faith in a deity. Many of us will find that, over and over, our faith in humanity gets tested. We are immersed in a culture that's deeply corrupted by selfishness, greed, and oppression-born privilege and fear. It's all too easy for us humans to justify the dehumanization, ostracization, suffering, and death of others. It's all too easy for us to devalue some humans' lives and feel somehow like we're still good, upstanding, moral people. Religion at its best asks us to do better than this, to rise above the selfishness and status seeking, the othering and xenophobia that come so easily to us human beings. Religion at its best, and our Unitarian faith, calls us to honour that which is sacred in each person, even those we might hate, It impels us to accept, on faith, that there is a sacred spark, a worthy spark, in every person. This can sound mundane, but it's very radical, revolutionary even. Each person sacred, each person worthy. Accepting this on faith changes how we live. In this time when so many of us live in fear and despair of a dehumanizing political climate, let us renew our pledge to live out those sacred and humane teachings that draw us towards compassion, love, and justice in ever-widening circles of care.
Thanks, Lochlann. So we're moving into a time of meditation now, and take us into the stillness. We're going to share a few words from my friend Laura Dobson, who's a minister with Chorlton Unitarians. She gives her personal perspective of faith as a precursor to inviting our own reflection. Laura's words will take us into a few minutes of shared silence that will end with the sound of a bell, and then we'll hear some more music for meditation from George. So again, let's do what we need to do to get comfortable. You might want to get your feet flat on the floor if that helps you to feel more grounded and steadied. You might want to close your eyes. The words are just an offering. Feel free to use this time to meditate in your own way. So Laura writes, "It is hard to describe my faith beyond that it is a faith in love as our ultimate purpose. What I can tell you is what it means to me to be a woman of faith. How my faith compels me to treat others with respect and compassion. How my faith allows me to be comfortable with ambiguity. How my faith helps me to develop the confidence to step into the unknown and try new things, to nurture them and to let them go if necessary. How my faith helps me to understand that I do not need to fix disagreements and conflicts immediately or by myself. How my faith teaches me to ask for help when I need it, to learn from others and remain open to change. How, in faith, I allow life to unfold. What does faith mean to you?" So as we move into this time of shared stillness, I invite you to sit with that question. What does faith mean to you?
Faith is a Verb by Frank Clarkson. Our theme today is faith. I wonder, when you hear that word, what it evokes in you. Does it make you smile, or does it cause you to tense up? If you hear, let's talk about faith, does that feel like an invitation or a test? Maybe both. It seems that faith is seen as a difficult word that many people are happy to avoid. I understand why, when faith has too often been used to control and exclude and oppress. When faith is treated as like a gate, you have to say the magic words and believe them or pretend to in order to get in. But that's not what faith is. Faith is not about what you think or believe. It's how you live. It's how you act and what you choose to do. Faith isn't a thing you possess. It's a practice that can grow stronger over time. Adversity can help. Sometimes faith appears when everything else seems lost. Martin Luther King Jr. told a powerful story about his experience of this early days of the Montgomery bus boycott. In the early days of the Montgomery bus boycott, when his life and family were being threatened daily. On a dark night, he was sitting alone at his kitchen table, unable to sleep because of these death threats. He prayed, naming his doubts and fears, and a new faith came. He wrote, "At that moment, I experienced the presence of the divine as I had never experienced God before. It seemed as though I could hear the quiet assurance of an inner voice saying, 'Stand up for justice, stand up for truth, and God will be at your side forever.' Almost at once, my fears began to go. My uncertainty disappeared, and I was ready to face anything." Does faith necessarily involve God or some kind of higher power? I'd say not necessarily, but that faith does involve something larger than one's own ego, which is often the parts of ourselves that resist faith and is threatened by it, that tells us faith is unreasonable, impractical, a dream. Too often people talk of faith like it's a thing you either have or you don't. He was a wonderful person until he lost his faith. Or faith is seen as signing on to a particular creed or set of beliefs, like a secret handshake. And often faith is equated with certainty. It has to be unshakable to be faith at all. But isn't faith richer and more nuanced and more beautiful than that? Isn't faith holding on to hope when you don't know how? Isn't it the following of a vocation when you don't know where it will lead? Isn't that what faith is? It's not what we say or think or even believe. Faith is what we do, how we act, how we move through our days and our lives. That's what faith is. Moving forward when you can't see what's just ahead, but still taking that next step. Faith is a verb.
Thanks, Jasmine. So today we're exploring this concept of faith. This is a bit of a generalisation, but over the years I've picked up this impression that a lot of us who end up in Unitarian congregations are a bit uncertain or ambivalent or even squeamish about the very notion of faith, perhaps in large part because we're not entirely sure what it means. Do we really want to call ourselves people of faith collectively, or to consider ourselves as having faith individually, when the way the word is often used in common parlance gives it a number of connotations that we might not feel entirely at ease with? In the main, I think people tend to associate faith with belief in something in particular, probably belief in God, with God being understood in a very particular way, a way that's probably derived from the dominant religious tradition of this local culture. We make reference to Christian values by default. And also with belief being understood in a very particular way, in the sense of an intellectual agreement that God exists, and that a certain collection of theological doctrines that go with it are true and probably literally true. As Unitarians, we probably already know, at least intellectually, that religion doesn't really work like that, or at least it doesn't have to. Of course, there are plenty of religious traditions that seem to emphasize belief, that put a lot of weight on subscribing to particular creeds or making particular declarations. That's a practice I associate mostly with the more evangelical churches. But we are part of a free and creedless religious tradition, and I think we know that there's more than one way to be faithful. So perhaps our ambivalence about speaking of faith comes from a sense that the more conservative traditions kind of own the word somehow. Of course, that's not the case. That's why I shared those words from the Buddhist teacher Sharon Salzberg at the start of the service, to encourage us to reclaim the word, to consider what faith means to us and how we might understand ourselves as progressive people of faith. Sharon Salzberg said, "I want to invite a new use of the word faith, one that is not associated with a dogmatic religious interpretation or divisiveness. I want to encourage delight in the word, to help reclaim faith as fresh, vibrant, intelligent, and liberating." So where do we start? Well, it would be remiss of me to speak about faith here without crediting Richard Bokey, a Unitarian minister who sadly died just a few weeks ago at the age of 95. And I also want to pause to note that Richard's wife, Yopi, is also a Unitarian minister who served here as interim minister in the 90s. I know Juliet remembers her well. Richard was deeply engaged with questions of religious freedom and interfaith dialogue. He spent many years wrestling with the meaning of faith in that context, drawing strands of wisdom from all over the place. And he came to an understanding of faith as primarily being about trust. Richard made this observation. In the Quran, the word amana means to have faith. On the other hand, zana means to have an opinion. In Christianity, Augustine, Aquinas, Bach all bear witness that credo means what it says. I place my heart. That's the etymology of the word, apparently, of belief and creed. When Luther affirms that the just shall live by faith alone, he does not mean the just shall live by the right mental decision. And Hebrews chapter 11 opens, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." This is not a discussion of intellectual assent, but of living trust. What I take from this is that faith means trusting in something beyond the rational. It's about accepting that we can't work everything out by ourselves. As wonderful as our human faculties might be, this universe we find ourselves in is too vast and complex for us to understand or control. We're part of an immense dynamical system thrown in with all the other people and creatures and planets and atoms all doing their own thing and bumping up against each other in challenging ways that we often can't do a thing about. In life, we will frequently find ourselves at the limits of our power, and that's where faith comes in. This acknowledgement of something that's just beyond us. Speaking about faith in this way makes me think about the spiritual language of 12-step groups. They know when life is unmanageable, when we're really up against it, there is something to be said for surrender. Faith can liberate us from the mistaken thought that we can control everything, that we can fix every problem, put things right through the force of our own individual efforts alone. Sometimes it's the right thing to do to just let go of our struggles and hand them over to God or a higher power, however we understand it. In tough times, there can be a huge sense of relief, comfort, even liberation in letting go like this in faith. To quote Richard Bokey again, faith is not a matter of leaving it all to God or believing that we can do it all. Rather, in the words of Paul Tillich, it is finite freedom. The affirmation that we cannot do everything, but we can do something. The beginning of faith was beautifully stated by Reinhold Niebuhr when he wrote the Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Of course, this is all still pretty mysterious. It all depends on how you understand God or higher power and whether you're prepared to engage with those concepts at all. I reckon it's okay to adopt such an attitude before we fully understand it. Just dive in. That is what we mean by a leap of faith. I appreciate these words from William Sloane Coffin. There is nothing anti-intellectual in the leap of faith, for faith is not believing without proof, but trusting without reservation. Faith is no substitute for thinking. On the contrary, it's what makes good thinking possible. It has what we might call a limbering effect on the mind. By taking us beyond familiar ground, faith ends up giving us much more to think about. There's a parallel I've heard, and one that I've probably shared before, and I like it very much. The parallel between coming to faith and falling in love, or perhaps committing to someone in marriage or a long-term relationship. The leap of faith involved in both cases opens up more possibility, more depth than you can reach when you're holding back and sitting on the sidelines. In both cases, it is about giving your heart, making a commitment, seeing where it leads, rather than constructing some sort of rational argument. If we're half-hearted or tentative about it, we might just be missing out on something that's rather beautiful. And although there's some moment in time when you make the leap, that's not the end of the story. As with any ongoing relationship, you have to make it work. You have to do faith in the same way that you have to do love. As we heard in the last reading from Jasmine, faith is a verb, just like love. It has to shape how we actually live. So maybe we can think of faith as a way of being in the world, a way of seeing, an attitude we take to the life and the universe, to everyone and everything we meet, a way of receiving and responding to the ups and downs that life brings our way, not passively or fatalistically, but deeply engaged, while also recognizing the limits of our power and control. To quote Richard Bokey again, faith is a responsibility in the face of ever-changing reality. The immature forms of faith or beliefs close us off from the world until reality shatters our walls. Mature faith knows the terror and the void, knows the fear of rejection, and still reaches out in hope. In my search to define faith, I come to these words. Faith is our perception of reality conditioned by relationship and ritual. Or how about this take from the Zen teacher Alan Watts? Faith is an unreserved opening of the mind to the truth, whatever it may turn out to be. Faith has no preconceptions. It is a plunge into the unknown. You can only know God through an open mind, just as you can only see the sky through a clear window. Or this from the Lutheran theologian Paul Tillich. We're going on a tour of religious traditions here. Faith is not an acceptance of doctrines, but the acceptance of the power itself, out of which we come and to which we go, whatever the doctrines are through which we accept it. A faith which can lose every concrete content and still exist as an absolute affirmation of life as life and being as being. That phrase might take a little moment to grasp, but I like that sense of faith as something universal that remains constant regardless of the precise details of the religious tradition through which we come to find it. And finally, for those who like God language, one quote from Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Faith does not mean certainty. It means the courage to live with uncertainty. It does not mean having the answers. It means having the courage to ask the questions and not let go of God, as God does not let go of us. As you may have gathered, this is all so tricky to articulate. But for me personally, faith is about trusting that there is an underlying goodness to the universe. And that's something I'm happy to call God. God is actively trying to lure us to join in with this goodness, to recognize it, appreciate it, amplify it, actively participate in the creation of more of it during this all too brief span when we're alive here on this earth. Goodness might take many forms. We might experience it as love, beauty, truth, justice. But while we're alive, we're called simultaneously to surrender to the flow of life and get stuck in, doing whatever we can to serve the common good and help nudge reality in a slightly better direction. In this view, we can see ourselves as part of a larger story, even as we experience and endure disappointments and setbacks, as the moral arc bends towards justice, and we trust that good in some sense will prevail in the end. Or if you like, and I quite like it, you might even choose more traditional language. Faith commits us to the path of righteousness, striving to do God's will, ultimately helping to build the kingdom of God. That's my personal take on faith. At least it's where I'm where I'm at with it today. And as my inevitably slightly clumsy attempt to put it into words. It is, after all, ineffable stuff. But as this reflection draws to a close, let's return to the question that we meditated on earlier. It's one I encourage you all to ponder in the week ahead. What does faith mean to you? It's probably a question to wrestle with for the rest of our lives. I look forward to hearing your responses over tea and cake, of course, and in the weeks to come. Amen. Let us sing again, one last time. Our final hymn is number 208 in your green hymn books, Forward Through the Ages. Quite a traditional and stirring hymn to end on, so let's give it our best and sing up hymn 208. Just a few announcements then. Thanks to Ramona for tech hosting, Lochlann for co-hosting online. Thanks to George for all the lovely music today. Thanks to Brian, Lochlann and Jasmine for reading, for Juliet for greeting, and Brian indeed is covering the tea making at the last minute, so he's already gone out to put the kettle on. If you're here in person, we've got lime drizzle cake today, berry lime drizzle cake today, first cake made in my new oven. If you're online, I meant to say, I don't get to chat with the people who come Sunday mornings online very often. If you're a regular newcomer and we haven't had a chat, please do reach out and get in touch. I'd love to know what brought you to us and get to know you better. What's going on the rest of the week? Tonight and Friday at 7 o'clock, we've got our Heart and Soul online contemplative spiritual gathering. All are welcome. This week's theme is desire. Email me if you want to come along to that and I will send you the link. We haven't got community singing this week. Our singing leader has decided to take a break for the summer. I hope we'll resume in September, but you never know. I'll keep you posted. Next Sunday, we've got the art play crafternoon. That's just a relaxed, chill-out time. We take all the art materials out of the cupboard, sit, chat, play, paint, stitch, whatever. You bring your own project or play with the stuff we've got out of the cupboard. With all these new initiatives, I'm trying to keep an eye on how much interest there is. So let me know if you come into that, and we'll carry on for a bit, but it would be good to know how much interest there is in that continuing. Margaret's singing group is on an irregular date this month. That will be not the third Sunday, but on the 29th of June. You have singing with Margaret. And this month's Better World Book Club is on Lay by Safraz Manzoor. This is my last copy available to lend out if you want to come along to that. That is going to be on the 22nd online if you want to come to the book club. All the titles for the rest of the year have already been announced, and the information is on a flyer that you can pick up in the foyer. All these activities are on the back of the order of service. They're in the Friday email, they're in the newsletter. You've got various ways to be reminded of what's going on. If you want to take a newsletter for someone else, please do. They're not cheap to produce, but we want to get the word out, so happy to share. The congregation has very much got a life beyond Sunday morning, so let's keep in touch and do what we can to nurture supportive connections. Just time for our closing words and closing music then. Our faith, like a light, illuminates the path before us so that we can face hurt with love, cultivate compassion, live humbly in community, and confront despair with the awe of life. Though we extinguish our chalice flame, our faith shines bright before us, lighting our way as we step out in courage to meet the days to come. Amen.